Right, welcome to the video guys. Today I'm going to show you how to build a gaming PC. Right, for this build we're going to use the Ryzen 5 1600 with its stock cooler on the MSI X370 Gaming Pro Carbon motherboard. For power supply we're going to use the EVGA 650 G3. It's a gold rated 650 watt power supply. The RAM will be 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 CL16 Corsair Vengeance RGB. The boot drive will be a 250 gigabyte 860 EVO Sata SSD, and for the graphics card we're going to use the MSI GTX 1660 Ti Ventus XS OC edition, and all this is going to be put inside the Fractal Design Meshify C case. The first step is to take your motherboard out of its box and place it on top of it. Then come along and look for the CPU socket, which has a lever next to it. You want to lift this lever up, ready for you to install your CPU. Now take the CPU out of its box, place it on the socket lining up the triangle on the bottom left hand corner of the CPU with the triangle corresponding to it on the motherboard. You simply hold it over it, very gently, place it down and it will fall into place. Close that arm and that locks the CPU in place. Now you will want to take your cooler, which in my case we're using the stock cooler. As you can see here, it's got no thermal paste on it because I've used it before. I'm going to apply some new thermal paste. This is a Rave Spire cooler, but as you can see it's got 4 push pins to mount it. On here you can see the board has got brackets which are used for other coolers, such as a Cooler Master 240mm AIO uses those brackets to install on AM4. So you want to take your screwdriver, right, so you will need to get your screwdriver and you will need to remove these 2 things here. Now right, you got both of them out. Put the screws somewhere safe so you don't lose them, because you may need them again in future. As you can see, these are the 2 brackets. 2 clamps usually clamp down on top of them for different coolers. To be honest, they're even easier to install than these ones, although this is by no means difficult. Right, now before you can install your cooler, you need to put some thermal paste on the CPU. Now, you don't need to put a lot. A pea-sized drop is usually more than enough. So that's what we will do here. Right, you just come to the middle of the CPU and place a pea-sized drop just on it. And that's all you will need. You don't need to cover the CPU. When you put the cooler on it, the pressure will evenly spread the paste across the CPU and cover it. Right, now you put that on there. You want to line your cooler up with the corresponding holes on the motherboard. Try and make sure it's straight, which on this one it won't be because of the orientation of the CPU socket. And you simply want to place that down on it with the thingies over the corresponding holes. Grab your screwdriver, start in one corner, screw it in a little bit, come round to the opposing corner, screw that in, hasn't gone in, go to the next corner, screw that in a little bit. The aim of this is to apply pressure evenly across the CPU while installing the cooler. Instead of just tightening up one side completely, you go along and you do it bit by bit. We have one secure cooler. Now, you want to come along, tuck that in and plug that into the CPU fan header which will be next to the CPU, usually just above it to the right. And that's a CPU cooler installed. It's that easy. Now next, we're going to install the RAM. Now we've got two 8GB sticks of DDR4 3200 CL16 Corsair Vengeance RGB memory. Now this is dual channel memory, so it will need to go on this motherboard in slots 2 and 4, which is the second slot in from the left and the last slot on the right. Now you'll see that the memory has different sides to it. This one will go in the DIMM slots in the corresponding sides that you will see the clip in the middle. And it's that easy. Same again for the second one, in the outside slot. Job done, you've just installed RAM. Right, so now we've prepped the motherboard and put the CPU and the RAM in. Let's take a look at the case. There will be a fan here usually, I've removed that. So it's easy to put the motherboard in. You're going to see, I don't know if you can see on the video, but there are 9 motherboard standoffs here, because this is for an ATX board that we're putting in there. Right, so now we're going to install the power supply into the case. Here we have the EVGA 650 G3 power supply. It's a gold rated 650 watt power supply, and we're going to install that now. Now on the bottom here, you can just make out there are some little screws. You unscrew these, and that releases the power supply bracket. This attaches directly to this power supply using 4 screws that will come included, and you just simply screw these into the corresponding holes on your power supply. Just screw it in a little bit, it doesn't need to be screwed in all the way. And once you've got all 4 in, tighten them all up. Right, now the power supply is ready to install. Right, now once you've screwed all them in, some power supplies come with the cables already attached. This is a modular power supply, so all the cables come out. I've already installed this one, but showing you the rest of them installation will perfectly show you this one as well. So what you're going to need to do is, in your pile of cables that will come with your power supply, they may be in a bag, they may not be in a bag, you need to find out your VGA cable, your CPU cable, and at least one SATA cable. For this build I will only need that many, but for yours, depending on how many hard drives or graphics cards you might have, you might be building a multi-GPU system. So now you're going to want to take your VGA cable. You'll either have 1 or 2 of these pins depending on the power supply you've got, the wattage. There may be both. You would also need to take your CPU cable that goes to your CPU header on the motherboard, and you will also need a SATA cable. This will power the hard drives. Now it's easy to install these. You just take this one, you clip it in, and that's done. Take the next one, clip that into VGA 1. You'll hear it click, and there it is. And finally, the SATA cable, which you can place into SATA 1, just down here underneath the 24-pin motherboard pin. And that's done, that's all your cables installed. Right, so now we're going to install the power supply into the case. This is fairly straightforward on this case. We'll start by feeding the wires through. Putting them out there. Would help if I have the power supply the right way around. You want the power supply fan, you can see it here. You want that facing down in this case, so it can get some air, keep it cool. Once it's in, turn the case round. You want to do up these 2 screws that we did earlier. And there you can see the power supply is now installed. Now, with some cases, I would say the majority of cases, you will probably need to route some of these wires before you install your motherboard. Like the CPU header, for instance. That would probably need to be put through. Definitely in this case, it will need to be put through first because the motherboard can cause it to be a bit tricky. So we'll put that through there. Now the rest of the cables, 24-pin motherboard will come through there. Right, now that you've got your case all prepared and your power supplies installed in the case, now you need to put the I/O shield in for the motherboard where you place the motherboard. You just push this to the back of the case and then just clip it in like so. And that's in. Then you go over and get your motherboard, bring that over, just hold it by the side, it's nice and easy, lower it in, align it with the holes in the motherboard standoffs, grab your screws. It's best to start off in the corners, go from bottom corner to top corner, screw 2 in so far, get the third, and just do that all the way along until all the screws are in and the motherboard's secure in the case. Right, then once you've screwed all them in and you're sure that it's secure, this is the 24-pin motherboard connector from the power supply. I'm going to push that in, it only goes in one way, you'll see the clip. Push that in, feed the wire through a bit more, you don't need that much slack. Now you got your CPU. This goes in the top left hand corner. Can sometimes be a bit awkward. There we go, that's that one installed in. Now you can pick your case up. So far we've managed to get the CPU cooler, the RAM, the motherboard, they're all installed in the case. Now we need to move on to the hard drives. Now for this build we're going to be using the 250 gig Samsung SSD and a 1 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drive as additional storage. Right, now for installing the SSD, we're going to need to put a SATA data cable, look like this. We'll need to plug that in, feed that bit through there, keep it nice and clean, and we're going to plug that in, and that one's in there. We're going to grab another one. This one will be for the mechanical hard drive, and we'll also feed that through, and we'll also plug that one in there like that. Right now, as you can see, it's a bit of a bird's nest behind here, but we can sort that out as we go. Most of these wires are going to be used later on. Alright, here we have a hard drive caddy. This is can be used for either the SSD or the actual hard drive itself. Right, now you're going to want to take the hard drive caddy, grab your hard drive, orientate it so that the connectors are at the front to make it easier to actually install them, because if you put this the opposite way around you won't be able to actually install the SATA data cable or the SATA power cable. And then screw that in with the provided screws that will come with your case. In this case it's these screws, and they screw on there like that. Now these are hand tight, you don't really need to, well I've never screwed these in with a screwdriver, I always just did it hand tight. Alright, once all 4 are screwed in, it'll look like that. And now it's just a case of moving the wires lining it up and sliding it in. And there it is. The hard drive is installed into the case, though it's not plugged in yet. Now you're going to want to take SATA power cable. You're going to want to push that. There'll be a little groove at the top. That'll go in that way. And that's that there done. Alright, once you've plugged in the SATA power cable, you're also going to need to plug in the SATA data cable into the hard drive. And clip it in and you'll hear a click. And then it's in. That's that hard drive installed. You do the same for the SSD as you've already done for this hard drive, and you put that in. You can do it vice versa. It doesn't matter which way you put it in. They just both need to be installed if you intend to use both. So we're going to plug these in. We can start by feeding these through. No, right. Now your motherboard manual will tell you exactly which one needs to go in where. For this motherboard, it's here they need to plug into. So it's a bit hard for me to show you that. But your motherboard manual will explain it. You just plug each one, the power switch into the power switch one, reset switch into the reset switch, so on and so forth. Right, now we need to install the graphics card, which in this case is the MSI GTX 1660 Ti Ventus XS edition. As you can see, we've already removed these two, so we can slot it in. And you'll see we're going to line it up with a PCI Express 16 slot here. And this bit here will slot into it nicely. There's only one way it can go in, so you shouldn't be able to get this wrong. Done. That's all you have to do. Bring this cable out a little bit. Maybe a lot. Maybe we'll do it that way. Now you'll see your graphics card might have two of these. It might need either an 8-pin like this, or a 6-pin, where you'll take two of the pins away and you'll plug that in, or it might need an 8 plus an 8, or an 8 plus a 6. You'll see this one only needs an 8-pin. So we'll plug this one in there, corresponding latches at the top. And that's that. Screw that in. And just screw that in like that. Now, that's it. You've built a computer. That's it. That's the final step. Except for, of course, plugging it in and turning it on, which we will do now. Alright, so once you've plugged in your graphics card and you've got all your fans plugged in into the respective fan headers, you've got your CPU and you've got your system fan headers. Obviously, your case fans go into your system headers, and your CPU, as I showed you earlier, goes into your CPU header. Now we're going to test to see if it actually works. Now we have the moment of truth. And there we have it. Let's boot it up. Let's whack XMP2 on. That will take our RAM up to its rated spec 3200. We've got 26 degrees on the CPU and 27 degrees on the motherboard. Let's hit F10. Let's go. And that's it. That's how easy it is to build your own PC. And there we go. We've loaded into Windows and everything's good to go. So that's it complete. The Ryzen 5 1600 with a GTX 1660 Ti in the Fractal Design Meshify C case with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 MHz RAM. That's going to be the end of the video there, guys.